They told us it was just a myth, a warning from a distant future, or a religious metaphor. But what if I told you it's already happening? The mark of the beast is not coming. It's here. Right now, across borders, behind closed doors and data centers and quiet boardrooms, something ancient is being reborn. A system, a sign, a seal. And it all begins with a prophecy. He causes all small and great, rich and poor, free and slave to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads. And no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark. Revelation 13:16-17. For centuries, scholars have debated this cryptic warning. Some dismissed it as apocalyptic poetry. Others studied it in silence. But what if the beast isn't just a creature of legend? What if it's a system, a network, an empire that doesn't conquer with armies, but with algorithms, with biometric scans, with centralized digital currencies, with promises of safety and chains of control? This video is not about religion alone. It's about power. It's about surveillance. It's about how entire nations are being prepared step by step to accept a new global order. One where your identity, your money, your movements, even your beliefs can be tracked, approved, or deleted. In this investigation, we'll uncover 10 nations already laying the foundation for the mark of the beast. Some of them are obvious, but nation number 3 will shake everything you thought you knew. So before you scroll away, ask yourself, are we still free, or are we already wearing the mark, without even knowing it? Stay with me. What you're about to see may change how you view the entire world, forever. Part 1. The system has been set. Global infrastructure for control. You may not see it yet. You may not feel it. But the system is already here. We're not waiting for the mark of the beast to arrive in the future. The infrastructure, the scaffolding for global control is already being built, and much of it is hiding in plain sight. Let's begin with something that sounds harmless, even helpful: CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. Governments around the world are racing to replace cash with programmable digital money. Unlike cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, these digital currencies are fully controlled by central banks, with every transaction tracked, recorded, and potentially restricted. This isn't just about going cashless. This is about total economic control. Imagine a world where your access to food, shelter, travel, even your ability to donate or speak online, depends on a system that can approve or deny your money in real time. And guess what? That world is no longer imaginary. Over 130 nations are developing or piloting CBDCs. Some have already launched. China's digital yuan is operational. Nigeria's Naira is live. And the United States, it's quietly preparing a Fed coin, hiding behind pilot programs and bureaucratic jargon. Now pair that financial control with the rise of biometric surveillance. Across cities and nations, our faces, voices, fingerprints, and even irises are being scanned and stored. Governments say it's for security or convenience, but who decides what's secure? From airport checkpoints to phone logins, facial recognition is being normalized. But behind this normalization is something darker: digital identity control. You can't enter a building, get a job, or access your account without verification. And soon, without the right verification, you may be locked out of life itself. And it doesn't stop there. Enter the social credit system. It began in China, a fusion of surveillance, behavior tracking, and moral scoring. Citizens with high scores get perks, faster loans, travel access, school admissions, but fall out of favor. Say something wrong, associate with the wrong people, question the wrong narrative, and suddenly you're frozen. You can't book a train. Your kids are blacklisted. Your money, useless. This isn't science fiction. This isn't tomorrow. This is now. And it's spreading. Western nations are exploring reputation-based systems under new names: digital trust frameworks, ESG scores online safety ratings. Different name, same beast. And speaking of beasts, let's talk about data. Data is the new currency of control. Massive data centers are springing up across the globe, storing your messages, your photos, your health records, your voice samples, your location history. Nothing is private anymore. Every smart device in your home, your phone, your watch, your doorbell, your thermostat, they're all feeding the system. And with 5G and soon 6G, the speed and depth of that surveillance will be instant and inescapable. Now picture this. All of your personal data, linked to your biometric profile, connected to your digital wallet, monitored through a centralized global system. That's not freedom. That's a prison without walls. But it gets even more invasive, because behind closed labs, corporations and governments are testing the next phase biological integration, microchips, neural interfaces, smart tattoos, technologies that don't just monitor you, they become part of you. From Sweden to Silicon Valley, people are already volunteering to be chipped, to pay with a wave of their hand, to open doors with the back of their palm. Convenience is the bait, but control is the hook. This is what we call beast tech. And it's not just emerging, it's being standardized. International organizations, the WEF, the UN, the IMF, are quietly working on frameworks to make digital IDs, centralized finance and behavioral tracking interoperable across all nations. Different governments, same playbook, same agenda, and no one voted for it. It's being marketed with words like safety, efficiency, and inclusion. But strip away the marketing and you'll find a system designed not to empower, but to enslave. Look around. Have you noticed how fast the world changed in just a few short years? How easily people gave up rights for comfort, for health, for peace. The system is here. The net is tightening. And still, this is just the beginning. Because now we turn our attention to the nations themselves, the players who have already signed on, knowingly or unknowingly, to the coming beast. 10 nations. 10 blueprints, and one of them will leave you speechless. Are you ready to see what's been hidden in plain sight? Let's begin with Nation Part 2, China, the prototype nation of digital slavery. If you want to see what the future could look like under the mark of the beast system, you don't need a prophecy, you just need to look at China. Not the ancient land of emperors and dynasties, not the China of tea ceremonies and dragon dances. No, this is the new China. The laboratory of global surveillance, the prototype for digital slavery. At first glance, it looks like a technological marvel. Fast trains, smart cities, mobile payment systems, all connected, seamless, and efficient. But behind the convenience lies something far more sinister, the social credit system. Launched in 2014, China's social credit system was introduced as a way to build trust. What it really built was an invisible cage. Every citizen is tracked, scored, evaluated. Your purchases, your friendships, your online comments, your daily behavior, even how well you sort your trash. Each action is added to a profile that becomes your digital soul. A high score. You get perks, priority loans, better schools for your kids, fast-track visa approvals. But a low score, you become a ghost. You can't buy a plane ticket. You can't get into certain hotels. Sometimes your face appears on public billboards with the word dishonest next to it. This isn't dystopian fiction. It's happening right now to over 1.4 billion people. And how is it enforced? Through the most expansive surveillance network the world has ever seen. Over 700 million CCTV cameras, many equipped with AI facial recognition, scan the streets of China 24/7. There's no need to hide, because you can't. Your face is a key, a tag, a weapon. In China, walking into a grocery store means being scanned. Crossing the street is monitored. Your car, your phone, your voice, everything is fed into one massive centralized system. They call it Skynet, a name that used to belong to science fiction. Now it belongs to your future. This isn't just about law and order. This is about obedience. If you say something that questions authority, you're punished. If you gather with the wrong group, you're flagged. If you follow certain religious content online, your score drops. Now ask yourself, what happens when this same system is internationalized? Because make no mistake, China's model is spreading. Nations across Asia, Africa, even parts of Europe are adopting similar tech under the guise of modernization. They're buying Chinese surveillance tools. They're hiring Chinese AI companies. They're praising China's efficiency without questioning the price of that efficiency. The price is freedom. The price is privacy. The price is the human soul. And in the heart of this system lies a prophecy. He causes all to receive a mark, so that no one may buy or sell except the one who has the mark. Revelation 13 wasn't a metaphor. It was a warning. And China is making it real. Because in this new digital age, the mark is no longer a physical brand, it's your digital identity. And the beast doesn't come with horns, it comes with code. Algorithms that decide your access. Cameras that track your steps. Systems that reward your silence and punish your truth. And it gets darker. Because China isn't just exporting technology, it's exporting ideology. A belief that individual rights don't matter, that the collective comes first, that data is more important than dignity, that freedom is negotiable and surveillance is peace. And the West is watching. Some are resisting, but others quietly are copying the blueprint. Biometric scanning at airports, behavioral scoring in insurance and banking, AI moderation of online speech. It's no longer just over there, it's creeping in everywhere. And soon we may all live in a world where your ability to participate in society depends on one thing: compliance. Obey the system and you're rewarded. Question it and you're erased. This is not a Chinese problem. This is a global pattern with China as the prototype, a preview, a test run, a digital Eden with a serpent in the code. Because the true danger isn't the technology itself, it's how it's used and who controls it. And in China, the beast isn't coming. It's already walking through every smart city, every facial scan, every score that decides who's worthy of life and who is not. So if you think you're safe because you're not in Beijing, think again. This model is being admired, replicated, globalized. And in the next part of this investigation, we'll take you to a country that no one expected, a nation that has quietly surrendered its people's privacy and is now being positioned as the next node in the beast's rising network. This is just the beginning. Part 3. Brazil, the unexpected servant of the beast. When we think of Brazil, we picture carnival parades, rainforest wonders, and football legends. But beneath the music and color lies something far more ominous. Brazil is being transformed, not by military coups, not by colonial powers, but by data algorithms and a global agenda few are willing to talk about. This South American giant with over 200 million people has become one of the most important testing grounds for a silent revolution, digital identity, and centralized currency systems, powered by globalist hands. Let's start with the biometric program. Few realize that Brazil is already home to one of the largest biometric databases in the world. Over 100 million citizens have been enrolled into facial recognition, fingerprint scanning, and voice print systems through programs framed as security measures and voter protections. It sounds innocent, it sounds efficient. But here's the truth. These databases are not isolated. They are interconnected and increasingly shared with private corporations and international partners. In 2021, Brazil launched partnerships with major tech companies to roll out biometric payment trials, not just in banks, but in retail stores, metro stations, and government services. You scan your face. The system deducts from your account. No card, no cash, no questions. Now, link that system to a central bank digital currency. That's exactly what Brazil is doing, and doing fast. They call it the Drex, a sweet-sounding name for what could become one of the most tightly controlled currencies on Earth. Brazil's central bank, with support from the International Monetary Fund (IMF) and World Economic Forum (WEF), has been developing this digital currency with two goals in mind. 1. To replace physical cash entirely. 2. To attach every transaction to a verified digital identity. In other words, you can't buy, you can't sell, you can't live economically unless your digital ID is approved by the system. Sound familiar? Revelation 13 echoes in the distance. But Brazil is echoing it right now. Here's where it gets even more unsettling. Brazil's government isn't acting alone. Over the past decade, Brazil has become a key player in a network of global public-private partnerships, elegant words for alliances between corporations, banks, and unelected international organizations. The World Economic Forum has praised Brazil as a model nation for digital transformation. The United Nations Development Program, UNDP, has called Brazil's biometric ID a breakthrough for inclusion. And the IMF has held closed-door meetings with Brazilian officials advising them on how to make digital ID and digital money work as one. Let's be clear, this is not about modernization. This is about monitoring. Because once your ID, your finances, and your public records are fused into one platform, you can be turned on or turned off. And Brazil, a country once known for its resistance to foreign control, is now being quietly absorbed into a system that does not tolerate dissent. Already the government has begun censoring misinformation online, often in partnership with platforms like YouTube and Facebook. Digital speech is being monitored. Online behavior is being scored. And with every digital step, Brazil gets closer, not just to surveillance, but to submission. The frightening part, most Brazilians don't even see it coming. The programs are marketed through slogans of safety, convenience, and innovation. They promise to reduce crime, make payments faster, help the poor. But beneath those promises is a trap, one that once sprung will be nearly impossible to escape. Because once your financial survival depends on a digital token, and once that token depends on your behavior, you are no longer free. You are programmed. And here's the twist. No one expected Brazil, a nation far from the traditional centers of global power, is quietly becoming a blueprint for other nations in Latin America and beyond. Mexico is watching. Argentina is studying. Africa is learning. The beast doesn't need to roar. It just needs to whisper through policies, partnerships, and pilot programs. And Brazil has listened. Now ask yourself, if a country as vibrant, defiant, and independent as Brazil can be woven into the beast's web, what about the rest of us? In the next chapter of our journey, we travel to a land filled with ancient prophecy, a land where religion, politics, and technology collide in one of the most controversial experiments in the modern world. You've heard of it, you've read about it, but you've never seen it like this. Get ready for Israel. Part 4. Israel, the technological Messiah, or the false one. When most people hear the name Israel, they think of ancient prophecy. The land of Abraham, the birthplace of the prophets, the sacred ground where 3 of the world's major religions converge. But today, something new is rising in the heart of Jerusalem, not a temple of stone, but a temple of technology. And the question we must ask is this: is Israel preparing for the return of the Messiah, or for the arrival of something else entirely? Let's begin with a truth that many overlook. Israel is one of the most technologically advanced nations on Earth. Per capita, it leads the world in tech startups. It is a pioneer in cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and biometric surveillance. And during the global pandemic, Israel became ground zero for a bold new experiment in health control and digital identity. The name of that experiment, the Green Pass. Presented as a temporary health measure, the Green Pass quickly became a gateway system. It determined who could travel, who could enter restaurants, who could attend religious services, and who was locked out of society. Citizens who complied with government mandates were granted access. Those who hesitated were excluded. For the first time in modern history, participation in daily life was tied directly to medical obedience, not unlike the warning in Revelation, that no one may buy or sell except the one who has the mark. But this wasn't just about COVID. The Green Pass became a test run for a much broader system, one that blends health surveillance, legal control, and digital identity into a single framework. Under the radar, Israel has been rapidly expanding its biometric programs. Today, every Israeli citizen is required to have a smart ID card embedded with biometric data, fingerprints, facial recognition points, and digital tracking capabilities. This data is stored in centralized national databases and connected to services ranging from healthcare to travel to law enforcement. Facial recognition cameras are now a regular part of urban life in public squares, shopping malls, synagogues, and government buildings. But here's what truly separates Israel from other nations experimenting with surveillance. In Israel, technology and theology are intertwined. Many of the systems being developed are not just for efficiency, they are being framed as tools to fulfill prophecy, establish order, and prepare the nation for the Messianic era. But here lies the danger, because throughout history, it has always been in the name of peace, prophecy, or religious duty, that the deepest deceptions take root. In ancient times, the prophets warned of a false Messiah, one who would come not in humility, but in power, one who would not liberate the soul, but enslave it through signs, wonders, and control. He will deceive many, even the elect, if that were possible. Matthew 24:24. Now consider this. Israel is working on a universal digital identity system. It is leading research into neural biometrics, AI-driven behavior prediction, and autonomous law enforcement drones. It has signed on to global digital agreements promoted by organizations like the World Economic Forum. And it's doing so while maintaining a national identity deeply tied to religion, ritual, law, and prophetic fulfillment. In other words, Israel is not just a technological hub, it is becoming a spiritual technological hybrid state. And as these systems grow in complexity, and as digital obedience becomes a sign of loyalty, one must ask, are these tools being prepared for the coming of a savior, or for the rise of a system that claims to save but demands total submission? What's even more unsettling is how other nations are looking to Israel as a model, admiring its speed, its control, its efficiency. But the Bible warns us not to be seduced by what appears to work, because not everything that brings order is righteous. Could it be that the very nation from which the true Messiah once came is now preparing the infrastructure for the false one? Could the mark of the beast be hidden beneath a banner of safety, prophecy, and divine destiny? We are not here to accuse. We are here to observe and awaken, because what's unfolding in Israel is not isolated. It is part of a larger global movement, a unification of technology, law, and belief into one controlling system. And as this system spreads, the warning signs are growing louder. Because next we'll journey into the heart of the European Union, where a digital empire is being reborn, under a new name, with a new crown, and a terrifyingly familiar script. Part 5. European Union, one voice, one system. If China is the test lab, and Israel is the spiritual prototype, then the European Union is the administrator, the bureaucratic face of a rising global order. At first glance, the EU looks harmless. It's presented as a peaceful coalition, a union of nations seeking prosperity, peace, and unity. But behind the polished speeches and blue flags with golden stars lies something far more coordinated. A quiet march towards standardized control. Across 27 countries, each with different languages, histories, and cultures, the EU is now implementing one digital identity system. They call it the EU Digital Identity Wallet. Every citizen will be issued a secure government-backed digital ID that stores their medical records, financial data, education, social benefits, and even criminal history. This wallet isn't just for identification, it's for access. Your ability to travel, open a bank account, see a doctor, or apply for housing, all of it will be linked to this one central profile. And here's the catch, it's mandatory. Already pilots are running in countries like Germany, the Netherlands, and Estonia. The European Commission has made clear by 2030 at least 80% of all EU citizens must be using the digital wallet. And this is not isolated. This identity system is being integrated with cashless payment networks, biometric checkpoints, and real-time government oversight. What does that mean? It means your identity, your body, your money, and your behavior are merged into one profile. A profile that can be approved or denied. Let's talk about borders. The EU is rolling out biometric entry and exit systems across all Schengen zone nations. Facial recognition, iris scans, fingerprint verification, all standardized. They claim it's for security and streamlined travel. But here's the truth. This system doesn't just track where you go. It tracks who you are and why you're going. Combine that with AI-powered monitoring of online behavior, bank transactions, health records, and social affiliations, and what you get is total data fusion. And while it's wrapped in terms like safety, integration, and modernization, what we are really witnessing is the blueprint of a beast. A transnational system where nations lose sovereignty, where individuals lose privacy, and where digital obedience is the new passport to existence. But this isn't just a political issue. This is a prophetic one. Because whether they realize it or not, the European Union is starting to resemble something ancient, something foretold. In the book of Daniel chapter 2, the prophet describes a vision, a statue made of different materials, each representing a kingdom. At the bottom, the final kingdom are feet of iron and clay, a divided empire partly strong and partly brittle. Many scholars believe this represents a revived Roman Empire. And what is the European Union if not that? The EU was born in Rome. Its founding treaties are called the Treaties of Rome. Its buildings in Brussels are filled with Roman symbolism, statues of Europa, riding the beast architecture echoing ancient imperial design. Even its legal code is heavily influenced by Roman law. Coincidence or confirmation? Because the beast described in Revelation doesn't come as a beast at first. It comes as a coalition, a union, a promise, a system that offers peace and demands compliance. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation. Revelation 13:7. That's not China. That's not Brazil. That's the language of the EU, a bloc with its own flag, its own currency, its own court, its own digital ID, and soon its own centralized digital currency. Yes, the digital euro is on the horizon. And just like Brazil's Drex and China's ECNY, it will be programmable, traceable, and enforceable. And with the EU's ID wallet, every transaction can be monitored. Your carbon footprint, your vaccine status, your political activity. This isn't about the environment, it's about enforcement. And in this empire, the question isn't if you're compliant, it's how compliant. So as we speak of Rome rising again, not through legions, but through logins, we must pay attention. Because the beast doesn't need to wear horns and terrorize cities. It simply needs to unify systems, erase borders, and turn freedom into permission. And the EU, for all its elegance and eloquence, is moving step by step toward one voice, one system, one control. But our journey doesn't end in Europe, because as the old empires awaken, a new continent is entering the arena, a land rich with resources, yet vulnerable to manipulation. And one nation within it, once the heartbeat of Africa, is now being positioned as a gatekeeper for the next phase of the beast's plan. Next, we head to Nigeria. Part 6. Nigeria, Africa's gate to the beast system. When most people think of Africa, they imagine a continent of vast jungles, ancient kingdoms, and resilient people. But few realize that Africa is also the new battleground, the testing ground for a coming digital world order. And standing at the very front of this transformation is Nigeria, the most populous country in Africa, a land rich in oil culture and influence. But now Nigeria is becoming something else, a gate through which the beast system is entering the global south under the disguise of progress and innovation. Let's start with what seems like a leap forward. In 2021, Nigeria became the first African nation to launch a central bank digital currency, the e-Naira. It was marketed as a revolution, a tool for inclusion, a digital solution to fight poverty and expand access to banking. But behind the curtain, this was never about access. It was about control. The e-Naira, like all CBDCs, is programmable money. The central bank has full And in the chaos, the message became clear. If you want stability, obey. Embrace the e-Naira. It was a perfect storm. People's livelihoods were held hostage. The poor suffered most. And the solution handed to them came with strings. Digital strings connected directly to the government's hand. This isn't theory. It's happening. And it mirrors the same blueprint we've seen in China, Brazil, and the European Union. Except in Nigeria, the manipulation is even more insidious, because it's being wrapped in the language of charity and development. The World Bank, the IMF, and international tech partners all applaud Nigeria's digital transition. They say it's the path to empowerment and equity. But who really benefits the people or the system? Because the e-Naira isn't a lifeline, it's a leash. And with the rise of digital ID programs across Nigeria, including biometric enrollment of rural communities, we're watching the merging of identity and currency in real time. Fingerprint and face scans are being collected in schools, markets, and even religious centers. And here's the disturbing part. Most people don't understand where their data goes. They're told it's secure. They're told it's for their own good. But in reality, the digital infrastructure is opaque. Foreign companies are involved. Cloud servers are hosted outside national borders, and oversight virtually non-existent. Now think about this. A nation where the poor can't access food, water, or shelter unless they comply with a system that tracks their behavior, their spending, their beliefs. That's not progress. That's digital colonization. But instead of soldiers with guns, it's developers with code. And instead of chains of iron, it's chains made of apps, QR codes, and behavioral scores. And just like that, Nigeria, a land that once threw off colonial rule, is being drawn back into submission, not by force, but by algorithm. Because the beast doesn't always arrive with a roar. Sometimes it whispers through innovation. But here's what makes Nigeria's situation even more urgent. Other African nations are watching. Ghana is exploring its own CBDC. South Africa is drafting digital currency frameworks. Kenya has begun biometric ID trials. Africa, long seen as behind in the digital race, is now leapfrogging into surveillance systems built not for its people, but for those who wish to control them. And the world applauds, because it looks clean, efficient, modern, but beneath the surface is something ancient. A hunger for domination, a system that tracks all, and a mark not burned into skin but etched into data. The question we must ask now is this. If the poor can be so easily manipulated through digital dependence, how long before the same system is used on the rest of us? Nigeria is the gate, and through that gate, the beast marches in. Now let's shift our eyes east to a land of mysticism, mythology, and mass population. Because what's happening in Nigeria is being magnified 100-fold in a nation where over 1 billion people are already enrolled, scanned, sorted, and assigned a number. Next, we journey to India, where the digital soul is no longer theory. Part 7. India, biometric nation of 1 billion souls. In a land of ancient temples and sacred rivers, a land where mysticism and modernity collide, a silent transformation is taking place. India, the world's largest democracy, the birthplace of countless philosophies, is now home to the most ambitious biometric surveillance system ever created. Its name, Aadhaar, meaning foundation in Hindi. Aadhaar is more than just an ID. It is a 12-digit number tied to your fingerprints, your iris scan, and your face. It is a number that follows you from birth to death across every aspect of life. And today, over 1.3 billion people are enrolled. Let that sink in. More than 90% of India's adult population is already part of this system. No opt-in, no escape. Aadhaar began as a government program to help distribute welfare and reduce fraud. But over time it grew. It was connected to bank accounts, then SIM cards, then tax records, health data, school enrollment, driver's licenses, utility bills, even fertilizer purchases for farmers. One number, one system, one identity. Without Aadhaar, you cannot function in Indian society. And that's the terrifying part. Because when your right to exist, to work, to eat, to live depends on a digital ID controlled by the state, that's no longer democracy. That's digital bondage. India's Supreme Court has raised red flags. Civil rights activists have sounded the alarm, but the system presses forward, expanding, deepening, normalizing. And now the government has begun introducing facial recognition software that can operate without even needing your Aadhaar number. Your face becomes your passport. You walk into a train station, you're scanned. You buy medicine, you're logged. You visit a government office, your biometric trail is confirmed. And behind all this is a centralized database so massive that it dwarfs anything seen before. But who controls this database? And more importantly, who controls the access? The answer: a handful of agencies and a growing number of private corporations working in partnership with the state. Big tech companies from around the world have lined up to integrate Aadhaar with their platforms. And that's where the danger multiplies. Because Aadhaar isn't just an Indian issue, it is a global test case. A model for what the future of digital identity could look like at scale. Over 1 billion souls tagged, tracked, and tethered to a number they didn't choose. Living inside a system that promises inclusion, but delivers conditional access. Access based on behavior, compliance, submission. And if you step outside the lines, your number can be suspended, your access revoked. This is not a prediction. This has already happened. There are documented cases where elderly citizens whose fingerprints didn't match due to age were denied their pensions and food rations, where women were unable to access health care because their biometric authentication failed, where farmers lost government subsidies because a server went down, and their Aadhaar couldn't be verified. Now ask yourself, what happens when a system this powerful is linked to a central bank digital currency? India is already preparing its digital rupee backed by the Reserve Bank. It will be programmable, trackable, and yes, connected to Aadhaar. So imagine a future where you criticize the government online and suddenly your digital rupee transactions are flagged. You attend a protest and your Aadhaar-linked benefits are paused for verification. You try to move money to a family member and the system denies the transfer due to behavioral inconsistencies. Sound extreme. Not anymore. Because when everything is connected and one ID controls all access, the mark of the beast doesn't need to be forced upon you. You'll accept it, because you won't be able to live without it. And what better place to test such a system than in India, a nation with massive population, limited digital literacy, and deep social divisions. To the outside world, it looks like innovation. To those inside, it often feels like surveillance in disguise. And this model is spreading. Several nations in Africa and Southeast Asia are adopting Aadhaar-style systems, even using the same software. India is exporting its surveillance framework and calling it digital empowerment. But we must ask, empowerment for whom? For the people, or for the system that monitors them? Because the beast doesn't need to conquer by war. It simply needs to convince you that control is convenience. And once you accept the number, you become part of the grid. No questions, no resistance, just digital obedience. From the back streets of Mumbai to the rural corners of Bihar, from temples to tech hubs, India has become a nation branded by code. But this is only the beginning, because the tools of control are being perfected here, so they can be deployed everywhere. And now we shift our gaze across the ocean to a superpower built on the promise of freedom. But even there, in the land of liberty, the beast is building its throne. Next, we uncover what's really happening in the United States. Part 8, United States, the beast behind the curtain. When people think of freedom, they think of America, the land of liberty, the home of the brave, the place where you can speak your mind, live your dream, and chart your destiny. But what if I told you that freedom is the mask, and behind that mask is something far more sinister? Because while the world looks to America as a beacon of democracy, it is quietly becoming the nerve center of a global surveillance empire. Let's pull back the curtain. The United States is not just another player in this digital revolution. It is the epicenter, the home of big tech, the laboratory of artificial intelligence, the capital of biometric research. From Silicon Valley to Washington, D.C., America is leading the charge in technologies that don't just empower, they monitor, predict, and control. Let's start with AI, artificial intelligence. The U.S. Defense Department and private contractors are building systems capable of tracking behavior, detecting emotion, and even predicting future actions. Yes, pre-crime isn't just science fiction anymore. These AI systems are being integrated into policing, banking, healthcare, and immigration. Facial recognition is already deployed in airports. Smart cities are being wired with sensors that track everything from movement to mood. Now connect that with biometrics. America has quietly developed one of the largest biometric databases in the world. The FBI alone stores over 640 million facial images, not just from criminals, but from driver's licenses, passports, and social media. Through DHS programs like Heart Homeland Advanced Recognition Technology, a person's face fingerprint, iris tattoos, voice, even gait can be analyzed and flagged across multiple agencies. And the public, they've largely accepted it in exchange for convenient safety, or simply because they were never asked. But the story gets darker, because in the shadows of policy and press conferences, a new kind of legislation is emerging. Quietly, methodically, the U.S. government has been laying the legal groundwork for total digital integration and enforcement. Let's talk about executive orders. Most people never read them. But within these documents lie blueprints for tomorrow's control. In 2020, Executive Order 1396C outlined the national strategy for trustworthy AI embedding surveillance standards across government departments. In 2022, Executive Order 14067 directed the development of a U.S. central bank digital currency, the so-called digital dollar. And more recently, legislative drafts have been proposed that mandate digital ID to access banking, healthcare, and online platforms. This isn't just planning, this is preparation. Because while politicians speak about protecting privacy, the reality is that every tool is being built to erase it. Even the military-industrial complex is involved. DARPA, the Pentagon's research arm, is working on neurobiometric ID, behavioral analysis implants, and brain-computer interfaces. One former DARPA project, Neural Engineering System Design, sought to develop a device that could read human thoughts in real time under the banner of medical research. And what starts in military labs rarely stays there. So now we ask, what happens when digital ID, AI surveillance, and biometric tracking are all connected, and then enforced through programmable digital currency? That's the real plan. The digital dollar will not just be money, it will be behavioral currency. Spend too much on fuel. Your carbon limit kicks in. Attend the wrong protest. Your account is frozen for national security. Refuse a mandatory digital ID. Access to your funds is restricted until compliance is confirmed. In this system, freedom is redefined not as your right to act, but as permission to participate. And who's building the system? Not just the government, but private corporations, the invisible hand of control. Companies like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, all deeply entangled with government contracts, are building the cloud infrastructure, the facial recognition algorithms, the AI policy frameworks. They call it public-private partnership. But what it really is a merger of power, a beast with no clear face but many mouths, many eyes, and absolute reach. It monitors your search history, listens to your voice commands, knows your location every second of the day. And behind the scenes, data brokers package and sell that information to governments, law enforcement, and intelligence agencies. It's all perfectly legal, because the laws were written not to protect you, but to protect the system. And here's the most terrifying part: Americans still believe they are free. They wave flags, they vote, they protest, but the cage is digital now. And it's invisible. And just like in Revelation, the beast comes not as a monster, but as an angel of light. It comes as safety, inclusion, efficiency, progress. A cashless society. A connected citizenry. A world where everything and everyone is traceable. But once the system is built, there's no logging out. And America, the land that once shouted, "Give me liberty or give me death," has become the architect of global compliance. Not because it was forced, but because comfort was more seductive than freedom. Now pause and consider this. The US is exporting its surveillance technologies around the globe. Its companies are writing the AI standards adopted by other nations. Its intelligence agencies collaborate across borders to track digital dissidents, and yet the average citizen sleeps. Why? Because in America, control wears a smile. It speaks in the language of choice. But behind that choice are only two options: obey or disappear. This is not paranoia. This is public record. The infrastructure is real. The currency is coming. The ID will be required, and the system, once complete, will not just monitor your transactions, it will monitor your convictions. Because ultimately, this is not about politics, it's about loyalty. And in a world governed by the beast, loyalty to anything but the system will make you a threat. But we're not done yet, because while the US builds the throne of the beast, there is another power, one cloaked in robes, candles, and cathedrals, preparing to place a crown upon it. A spiritual authority with global reach, and an agenda written not in code, but in prophecy. Next, we descend into the heart of Rome, to the city of keys and secrets, to the Vatican. Part 9. The Vatican, the spiritual authority of the beast. For nearly 2,000 years, it has stood as a symbol of faith, tradition, and divine order. Marble pillars, golden chalices, echoes of Latin prayers rising into centuries-old domes. The Vatican, the smallest country on earth, yet one of the most powerful spiritual authorities humanity has ever known. But in the age of digital surveillance, global resets, and biometric control, a haunting question emerges. Is the Vatican still a guardian of the sacred, or has it quietly become a spiritual gateway for the system of the beast? Let's begin with the symbols, because in the world of prophecy, symbols matter. Inside St. Peter's Basilica stands the throne of the Pope, known as the Cathedra Petri. Carved with angels, clouds, and divine light, it appears majestic until you look closer. The throne is surrounded by serpent-like figures. Above it, a stained glass window features a radiant dove, but surrounded by swirling eyes and flames that many say resemble the eye of Lucifer. Coincidence or encoded message? Elsewhere in the Vatican, mosaics depict creatures with multiple heads, blasphemous inscriptions and crosses inverted within artwork. Even the audience hall of the Pope, known as the Paul VI Hall, was designed in a way that when viewed from the interior, shockingly resembles a serpent's head, complete with scales, fangs, and slit-like eyes. How is it that the most sacred spaces in Christendom bear imagery eerily similar to the beast, described in Revelation? The dragon gave the beast his power, his throne, and great authority. Revelation 13:2. Could these visual choices be mere artistry, or are they quiet admission signs in plain sight of a deeper allegiance? But symbols alone do not tell the full story. In recent years, the Vatican has taken an increasingly globalist and technocratic position on world affairs. No longer limited to spiritual matters, the papacy now regularly speaks on finance, technology, climate policy, and digital governance. In 2020, Pope Francis released an encyclical titled Fratelli Tutti, calling for a new kind of global political authority, one that could enforce ethical decisions on a planetary scale. Shortly after the Vatican formally endorsed the idea of a unified global economy, one that would reduce inequality, combat climate change, and promote sustainability. But here's the catch. In order to achieve this, the Church has supported partnerships with the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and central banking networks, the very same organizations now advancing CBDC's digital ID and AI-based governance. And it doesn't stop there. In 2021, the Vatican hosted a summit called Human Fraternity Ethics in Artificial Intelligence. Among its attendees were executives from Microsoft, IBM, and Salesforce tech giants directly involved in building surveillance platforms, digital wallets, and biometric systems. The outcome of the summit: a document known as the Rome Call for AI Ethics, a declaration urging that artificial intelligence must be guided by Catholic moral teaching, but also centralized oversight. Let that sink in. The Vatican, once the defender of the soul, is now offering itself as the ethical compass for global AI development. But who decides what's ethical, and more importantly, who enforces it? Because in the wrong hands, ethics becomes a tool of spiritual manipulation, a justification for silencing dissent, for rewarding obedience, for demanding submission, not just to laws, but to a false righteousness. And that brings us to the core of the question: could the Vatican knowingly or unknowingly be preparing to introduce the false Christ? In Christian prophecy, the false Messiah doesn't come with horns and fire. He comes with charm, with authority, with the appearance of godliness but denying its true power. He performs signs. He speaks peace. He unites nations under the guise of morality while secretly ushering in the rule of the beast. He looked like a lamb but spoke like a dragon. Revelation 13:11. A lamb, the symbol of Christ, but a dragon's voice, the language of deception. Today, the Vatican speaks of inclusivity, interfaith unity, and moral leadership in a changing world. But hidden in these messages is the language of universal submission. It is building a platform where all religions must unite, all ethics must align, and all governance must bow to one global conscience. In December 2022, the Vatican even hosted a multi-faith gathering atop Mount Sinai, where religious leaders symbolically unveiled a new 10 Commandments for climate justice, rewriting moral law for a modern age. And who decides these commandments? Not prophets, not scripture, but institutions. Institutions with history, with power, with secrets. And this raises the most terrifying possibility of all. What if the world's most trusted religious authority becomes the mouthpiece of the beast? What if, under the banners of love, justice, and unity, it prepares the world to accept a system that monitors your soul, measures your worth, and controls your salvation? Because in the system that's being built, there will be no need for a sword. You'll volunteer your freedom. You'll worship the image not realizing it was manufactured. You'll accept the mark thinking it was holy. And who better to introduce it than a leader who claims divine authority, but sits upon a throne decorated with serpents and secrets from the ancient Roman Empire, to the medieval Inquisitions, to today's digital declarations. The Vatican has always been more than just a church. It is an empire, a spiritual force, and perhaps the final piece in the puzzle of Revelation. But the mystery doesn't end here, because while the world looks to the Vatican for moral direction, another power remains hidden, invisible, yet operating behind every screen, every transaction, every law. It has no borders, no name, no face, and yet it moves the world. In the next and final section, we'll expose the one force behind it all, the 10th and most mysterious power preparing humanity for the arrival of the mark. This is where everything converges. Part 10. Who's next? The final nation and the coming revelation. We've traveled across the world, from the surveillance streets of China to the biometric slums of India, from the algorithmic grip of the United States to the spiritual throne of the Vatican. And now we arrive at the most elusive player of all, the 10th nation. A nation so deeply entangled in the web of global control that it no longer looks like a country, but like something beyond a nation. A veil, a shadow, a force operating behind the faces we recognize. This final nation may not have a flag. Its soldiers wear no uniform. Its parliament isn't televised. Its leaders are not elected. And yet it rules. Silently, systematically, globally. Let's call it what it is, the hidden empire. This isn't a conspiracy, it's a convergence. A network of supranational entities, corporations, think tanks, data syndicates, defense contractors, pharmaceutical giants, AI labs, and international banks, all woven into one technocratic lattice that stretches across the planet. You've heard the names WEF, IMF, WHO, BIS, BlackRock, Palantir, Google DeepMind, DARPA. But these are just pieces of a much larger machine, a machine that doesn't care about borders, doesn't answer to voters, doesn't operate within the law because it writes the law. It advises presidents, it finances wars, it creates pandemics of fear and then sells you the cure. And now it's testing something that even science fiction feared to imagine: neurobiological surveillance. This is no longer about your fingerprints or your face. This is about your thoughts. Deep in hidden labs in Israel, Switzerland, and the west coast of the United States, research is being conducted into neurotelemetry, brain-computer interfaces, and AI-driven emotion prediction. The goal: to map and monitor the human mind, to create a world where a central system knows not just what you do, but what you want to do before you act. Every emotion, every moral hesitation, every rebellion, predicted and prevented before it happens. He causes all to receive a mark, so that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark. Revelation 13:16-17. In this final stage, the mark of the beast is no longer visible. It's not a tattoo, not a microchip. It's something far more intimate. It becomes mental, spiritual, biological, and it's already being tested. Certain nations have quietly approved brainwave monitoring headbands in schools and workplaces, tracking concentration fatigue and emotional spikes. Meanwhile, tech firms are developing digital twins, real-time avatars of your consciousness stored in cloud servers. In the future, they are building your soul becomes data, and your behavior is pre-written not by you, but by the system. And who funds this? Not your government. These initiatives are financed by unelected alliances like the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, and secretive alliances of military and tech elites. Their meetings are not open, their agendas are not voted on, but their decisions shape your life. And here's the terrifying part. They've already moved past the idea of nations. In their world, democracy is obsolete, sovereignty is outdated, human will is inefficient. Their goal is something called the singular global mind, a world where everyone is digitally connected, biologically integrated, and behaviorally aligned with a central intelligence. And the technology to make it happen is no longer in the lab. It's on your phone, in your schools, in your hospitals, in your home. And now we must ask, what if the final nation isn't a place, but a condition? A spiritual territory that transcends geography, made up of every person who unknowingly accepts the system, not by force, but by default, through convenience, through trust, through fatigue. Are you already inside it? You use the apps, you swipe your face, you agree to the terms without reading, your wallet is going digital, your ID is on your phone, your thoughts are being monitored by algorithms that learn from you faster than you can unlearn them. And here's the most haunting truth of all. You may already be carrying the mark, not because you were branded, but because you never said no, because you never questioned the contract, never saw the trap. In Daniel's vision, he saw 10 kings, 10 horns each, ruling under a greater beast. And in Revelation, we read of a false prophet who rises from within the system to enforce its worship, and it was given power to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship it to be killed. Revelation 13:15. That image is being built. It's artificial, it's intelligent, and soon it will speak. So we return to the question we asked at the very beginning. Are you sure you're not already marked, because the beast doesn't arrive with fire and war? It arrives with updates, with notifications, with smart devices, safe cities, and emotional scoring systems. It doesn't need to knock on your door. It already lives inside your pocket. And when it comes fully revealed, it won't look like a monster. It will look like a savior, a messiah, a solution. But underneath it is hunger, it is deception, it is the end of free will. The final nation is you, your heart, your consent, your silence. So now the choice is yours. And in the final moments of this journey, we offer a message not of fear, but of clarity. Because the time is no longer coming, the time is now.